Okay, so we are into the new room and still waiting for Natalie to join us, and then we shall continue where I left off. I was questioning something. Yeah, I was questioning what to do with my land and buildings. They didn't tell me how much I'm going to sell it for. So maybe that's an assumption. So when Natalie gets back, we'll continue along that line. Where is Natalie? That's a good thing about a stopwatch, so I could stop it. So Anita, what do you think about tonight's presentation, trying to get it done in exam mode? Not ready. Not ready for what? Not ready for me to work in exam mode? Well, we have about a month. What is your plan? Too much reading. Yeah, that's a case question. Yes. Now remember, you want to read your past papers case answers as well, eh? So all of the case questions, all of the essays, make sure you read those, right? Because as we just illustrated with this past paper, you have more marks in the reading writing. Small bits repeat. For example, a question on the Greeks. I believe they have tested all the Greeks before, and anything else they ask you on the Greeks will be a repeat of that. So small topic areas, topics like buy-in management, buy-in and management buyout. That was tested previously, and it came back recently, and that's the same thing. The problem with that, Anita, is while the short answer is yes, the problem is the volume of theory. So how long did it take to repeat that question on the Greeks? How long did it take to repeat a question on Islamic financing? I don't know, 3 sittings between the repetition. It's not one sitting to the next sitting. So while the short answer is yes, and I hope that helps, because you may be asking that from the point of view, why read the whole answers if they don't repeat? So, yeah, the old ones repeat. The problem is you don't know which one's going to repeat, but short answer is yes. Yes, it does repeat. So therefore, it should be helpful. It would be helpful to read the old answers to try and capture as much of the syllabus as you can. And what I could look at is doing a little overview, even with the last 5 papers. If I just take those, which was part of what I want to do in creating the little worksheets with the calculation elements. So the calculation elements I will go through, compare those 5 papers to the syllabus, and see or be able to show you what areas of the computations were not tested. Watch out for those. And I could do a similar thing for the essay bits. Analyze those 5 past papers, show you which items were there. We will see any repetitions from there. And what areas were not tested, which I most presume would be a larger bit. So, what's that? Where is Natalie? You want me to go further down the screen? Part A. What normally comes in part A years? I don't understand that question, Anita. What normally comes in part A? Part A has me boggled. You're talking about part A of the question paper. You mean section A, or the first section, the 50 marker question? So yeah, that again, we will see that as we go through, which we could reflect on the two that we did so far. Today we're doing June 2015, and Monday we did December 2014. And if we notice, the 50 marker for December 2014 was not an NPV. So basically, it's anything can be thrown into that 50 marker. It could be NPV, it could be a hedging question with foreign currency and interest rate risk. It could be mergers and acquisitions. Very few times it's an entire essay question on that front area at the front of the manual on corporate governance. They wouldn't give you a whole question on corporate governance. Corporate governance has come in the 50 marker, but let's say for about 20 marks, right? But it hasn't come for the whole 50 marks. So basically, really, it's anything. That's the difficulty with this paper, Anita. Anything can come anywhere. So you cannot bank on NPV coming in the 50 marker. And similar to what I wanted to illustrate between last week and this week, last week's NPV is nothing like this week's NPV. Sorry, Monday's NPV, which was on those other small areas, IRR, MIRR, and what was the other thing? Right, a little piece of NPV. We had to compare the numbers, and the third bit was those forecasting bits with a normal table. I'm thinking duration, but it wasn't duration. Yes, the VAR, thanks. So yeah, none of that is here apart from the basic whole NPV in tonight's question. So saying one NPV question compared to the next NPV question illustrates the problem again of the breadth of the syllabus. The syllabus is so wide, they could bring anything in an NPV question from your NPV syllabus area, and they don't have to bring anything. Yeah, I understand that, but two issues with that, Anita. One is you're not going to get 50 marks worth of computations. And that's clear even from the 50 marker. More than half of the marks is for the essay. And two, the computations takes longer to do. So you don't have enough marks in computations to pass, and it's going to take you longer to do. And you stand the risk of losing more marks in a computation than putting forward a logical argument. And if you look at what I did so far with the question, it's not too much of memory, but it's more so of just taking the case information and making a logical argument out of it. And this is what we're looking for. So this is where I know, I mean, I was like that myself. I mean, I always like my maths. That's why I'm teaching this paper, so to speak. And however, the easier marks are in the theory. Let me send Natalie a message here. See if she's coming back. She'll probably have internet issues again. So Anita is telling me she's not ready, and Natalie is running away because of internet issues. Can I get away with just reading the thought notes? I would want to say a giant no to that, because they don't have enough of the theory. It's a last-ditch attempt, a last-minute attempt, but I would want you to back that up with two things if possible. One, no, not chapters. At this stage, you want to run away from your chapters. It's really too long now. Unless you have a method of skimming through the book, then use the chapters. The two other things I would want you to back up the taught course notes with are all of the kit answers and articles. Now, some of the articles can be long. Some of the articles are a bit technical. That's what they call them, technical articles. The language they use in some of them are a bit ridiculous. But some of them are quite straightforward. So go on to the website, grab your articles in the topic areas, see how best you can deal with them. Let me know queries as we go through, as we meet in these meetings, and we can deal with them if anything in the article is not making sense. So this is what I would guide you with. I think we spent enough time with the manual. Let's leave that there for now. Deal with your past papers, do your computations. In your reading, the taught course notes is not enough reading. You have to back that up by reading answers from the past papers, reading articles, right? So that will give you enough feed, enough fodder to be able to write an answer on key stuff. Natalie's not responding to the chat either. All right, so what you want to do, you want to continue here, you want to give the computation a shot then? Or you let me know. Anything. Aye. All right. Let me try and stick to my time limit and finish off the essay. And once that could be done, then I could probably, since you like the calculations, I could let you do the calculation. Did you attempt it before? I could probably let you do the calculation, try it under exam condition without watching the answer sheet. So give it a shot without watching the answer sheet and let me mark it. See if you can scan it and send it off before Monday. What do you think? Or you want to try and go through it together? Yeah. All right, not a problem. So let's get that done. All right. So let's try and spend a few minutes on the essay first and finish off that. Because again, I want to emphasize that's very, very easy to get marks here. Let me get back to my stopwatch, finish that, and then we'll deal with our competitions. So resuming, I'm on 29 minutes out of 50. Right, so we are continuing there as the recording would show that we do not have Natalie with us anymore. Hopefully she would benefit from the recording as well. So now that we have given up on Natalie, we will continue. Right. Sensitivity, that's one issue we had to deal with. And then now looking back, as I just flashed back to the question, I saw that we don't know what will happen to the other asset values. So we could say that there is no clear indication as to what will happen or what happens to the land and machinery purchased at the end of the project. This can often generate significant cash flows, which can make the difference between a positive and a negative NPV. What else was up there? Um, oh yes, cost of capital. So in our financial estimate, so basically just thinking about all that we need for the NPV computation will allow you to deal with any of the other items we need to detail. So here I will point out a couple. We just need to look at, again, as I said, the cost of capital. Where did that run away? There we go. Oops, pressed the wrong thing there. No video. Where is that? How do I get this video off? Hello, Anita. Move this window away from the shared screen. Didn't see video. If I just close that off, right? Yes, go ahead. Quick question. Do you explain each one of the estimates or leave it as a general statement? Well, I think we would want to sort of batch them. So what you could batch together and deal with generally, you do that, because it's a whole series, maybe about 17, and you cannot really discuss each one. So to try and save time there, you post those which can be together, and then there are certain few major ones that stand out, and the ones that stand out, deal with them, right? Which is basically what I'm sort of doing at this stage. So I've done in the introduction, I've gone through I've gone through a set, and I spoke about these things here: inflation, taxation, sales quantities, the basic stuff. So the basic ones, we know exactly what to do with those, and you just leave those there. We mentioned here that we assume all of these estimates are accurate. So the ones that are now iffy, we can really deal with them in some detail. All right, and that's what we're trying to get at. So the next one that's sort of major is cost of capital. So the cost of capital, we had two rates. What were they? Right, 9 or 12. And you need to choose one. All right, and we could make some comment about it as well. Good. So we'll just choose one and move forward. Don't spend 5 minutes wasting time on that. So the cost of capital is given as either 9% or 12%. We may choose to use the 12% as it is said to be project specific, but we do not have any details, such details to back this up. Relevant details would include the beta values for the industry, similar companies, and the current beta and level of gearing for M&E Co. I see. Right, so that's a normal on-gearing and re-gearing computation that we do. And we're saying basically we don't have the information, right? So just checking something here, 1 second. Settings, notification, display. Out to my clock. Right, so that's that. So the major ones we deal with. What else showed up? Next question. So the appendix calculation within the body, where it's appropriate, but at this stage, I don't see any of that being appropriate until you get to the recommendation. So what we could do is the other way around, right? In terms of right here, if you notice what I did in my last paragraph, I've basically chosen to use the 12%. So you could turn that the other way around. Instead of trying to do the computations, making assumptions which will allow you to get the computations done, and then come in to write down what those assumptions were. If we do it in reverse, we now make the assumptions, identify the ambiguous areas, make a choice, write that down, and then by the time we get to the computation, we have all the choices already made. Are you following that sequence? Yeah, so that's something we could choose to do. And basically, I just did that with a 9 versus 12%. I chose to use 12%. And again, identifying the problems, but at the same time, solving the exam problems where when I get to my computation now, I'm ignoring the 9 now, and I just explain why. So that's something you want to think of in terms of how to get through the question. All righty, next item of concern. Anything else we had to choose with? I am remembering the transfer price. What transfer price should we use? Sales revenue, selling price. What did we have? Going back up here. So we had these things like 200 versus 280. That was for the components. So the components. Components 200 parts, sales revenue parts cost 288. 288. So 200, yeah, can increase. That's correct. So it can increase to 280, sorry. Would we choose to use the 280 or would we choose to use the 200? I'll leave that coin tossing to you. Tell me a number. 280. All right. So again, there's no reasoning for it, but you throw it into this essay part now and you put it down as your assumption and you move on. Some other student could have chosen to use the 200. So I'll throw that in here. The transfer price of the component is taken to be 280 That was dollars. Dollars in current terms. This assumes that IC is successful in its negotiations, with the Y government. It may not, however, be so if there is a change in the government, since this current administration has already been in office for 3 years, and there is some resentment in rural areas to them. Right? I could carry on with that point saying an election is likely to be held before the end of the next 4 years, because with most countries, it's either 4 years or 5-year terms. Could even say that, assuming a 4 or even 5-year term in office. Right, so that's potential problems we have to look forward to. What else is of issue? So we had that pricing bit. We flashing up to the question again. Any other ambiguous thing we had to look at? I have a big question mark by this redundancy thing. And anything else? Royalty negotiation. This royalty fee. To increase royalty fee by 80%. That's one other thing we have to talk about. So let's deal with that royalty and then that redundancy. The royalty fee. Royalty fee. Working tree. Guess for that one again. Next 4 years, royalty fees. Are you going to increase it or not? Yes, the project is for 4 years. I was talking about the government terms, so we're going to increase it. The royalty fee is assumed to be increased by the 80%. How much would that get us? Could punch that in right here. That's a nice short calculation. The current royalty fee is, where did that run away? Should use here 36, right? So that's the 20 times the 1.8, 180%, which will get you the 36. 36. It's an amount in dollars, and it's an amount of what? Millions? $36 what dollars? 20 million. So that's $36 million. $36 million. again would depend on the wise remittance policy, REMI policy for multinationals. The current government again may be amenable or may allow this to attract the foreign companies. Once more, the risk that a change in government may not allow this has to be assessed and appropriate responses planned. Right, so that's that. What else? So we have those things, and then right, two other things. The start date, we sort of mentioned that. Production taking place almost immediately is not normally expected. However, during the first year, the budgeted or the expected production can be feasibly achieved. And, what else? What else? We saw those exchange rates. Was there any ambiguity? The redundancy. Yes, let's show in the redundancy. The redundancy costs are unclear as to are they in millions and which currency. We could make a bold move here and say at this stage we choose to ignore these costs in the NPV and basically work without it. And exchange rates are dependent on, well, doing a little cheat there. The examiner answers did ignore it, and there was a big note about that. That was kind of a typo in the question. And they said either which way, if students ignored it, if they use it as millions, if they use it as thousands, and they would have gotten the marks all the same. We're making a statement about it. And yeah, once you show the examiner that you've considered it, you can very well go and do whatever you've considered. So what happens in the computation is that if you use it as thousands, whereas all the other numbers were in millions, it actually makes no effect. So that sort of backs up the story of ignoring it. So if it was in thousands, it will not really have what we call that material effect on the outcome, and therefore you can ignore it. But don't ignore it by not saying anything. Ignore it by making a statement to the examiner and say why you're leaving it out of your computation, right? Which is exactly, again, the concept of the 17 marks, going through all of the assumptions. Yeah? Is that okay? That you're not ignoring it by simply leaving it out. That's right. We are not sure. Nobody is sure because the question didn't tell us. And you're using that as your statement to ignore it, right? But my idea is tell it to the examiner. Put it in your assumption section, which is clearly what this 17 marks is about, lining up your assumptions. So you could choose to ignore it. You could choose to put it in as millions. Either which way, you would have gotten your marks. That's clearly what the examiner report said. If you choose to put it in as millions, get the marks. If you choose to put it in thousands, which made no difference to the NPV, still get your marks. And definitely, if you choose to make a statement as to why you ignore it, you will get the same marks. So, on to exchange rates. Exchange rates are dependent on the inflation rates and inflation rate differentials or differences between the three countries. Foreign or forex hedging should be considered. Should be considered in case the exchange rates do not move favorably or as expected. Right, so identifying the items and coming up with types of solutions. So 48 minutes out of my 50 minutes. And I still need to get on to the other section. I've only done so far the financial considerations. I could put probably the next section, two sections into one part, and talk now about other risks and issues. So from the question, we're basically looking for financial, non-financial. So we could even introduce that here. These other risks and issues can be captioned as the non-financial issues that must be considered before a final decision is made. Um, 15 minutes is almost up. Read-in time. I didn't take into account read-in time. So let's see what we can. Political risks of the change in government policy, either by current administration or by a new administration that may result from upcoming elections, assuming 4 or 5 year term. So I think what you were asking before is project is lasting for 4 years, but the government will be changed, let's say every 5 years. They're already 3 years in office, and therefore the government's possibly going to change in the next 2 years, or there's going to be the elections next 2 years maximum, and hence that 2 years will be within the 4-year life of the project. All right, so make sure that's clear. And again, political risk of change in policies. MNECO, I see, will need to have some plans as to how to deal with this. That is exit strategies. Or methods to combat capital repayment restrictions that governments can impose. Right, so again, that's a whole theory section about all of these different restrictions on capital repayment. There's another word for that, capital repayment, on repatriation of funds. So yeah, they have to deal with it. So the next key element, the same remittances. The bit about the school. That was one of the elements we didn't deal with. Yes, very good. So, schools, social, right? So political, social, ethical, environmental. So these are basic headings we can use and pull out things from the case that will fit into there. So we did political, we're going to do social. We could stick in ethical, social and ethical considerations need to be taken into account. The issue of relocating school and children will be an important one for IC's image, while wise government has offered to pay for the bus transport for the first 6 months. What will parents do after this if they cannot afford the transport? I see. Could think about providing transport or even employment of those parents in the project. All right, so you need to, in creating the issues, again, do your proper discussion, look at both sides, look at why is it a problem, look at the pros to it or how it could be solved, basically. Right? So once you could come up with these things, that is what really captures the discussion. So cultural is another thing, and environmental. Right, so environmental, cultural. There is need to consider the cultural differences between the two countries as I see 6 to set up in a foreign country. Clashes in culture can lead to reduced productivity. Proper research into this area can avoid issues training needs, etc. And culture, I mentioned something else. Environment. Languages. Yeah, well, language will be not just for the children, but for the workers to try and get. Yeah, so I could throw that in the same paragraph before I look at environment. So let's leave environment there. Fix this sentence by identifying training needs and overcoming language barriers, stroke differences, etc. Right. Environmental concerns will also have to be taken into account. There is no information in the case to indicate if the project will be creating any pollution. This will need to be considered before Final decision is made. Right, so I would stop that there. The kid answer has a couple other things that talks about the real options and so on. It's how many things you can really get done in a time, right? So we have quite a bit there on the financial side, on the non-financial side. So the other piece remaining for our report would be the recommendation. Now, the reasoned recommendation can only be made after we do the computations. So let's get on to some computations. Let's see how that fits. See how long we can spend here. So if we deal with an hour for this computation, let's see what we can get done in an hour. Half 10 by half 11 or so. Right. Starting off your cash flows, Appendix 1. See basic cash flows. And again, we have the basic outline from either the manual or the taught course notes. It tells us line up your years, work in the foreign cash flow. Yes, part 1. So we know it's 4 years and there should be a T0. Again, all amounts are in Eland are in trillions. So I'm trying to avoid using some zeros. And let's see. Trillions. Excuse me. So T0, T1, T2, T3, T4. Right? And just lining up all the costs as you get them. So scroll back up. What's the first thing we're told about? All of these cash flows. Have these inflation values. So we've got to inflate stuff. We have tax to deal with. We have the company listed there, manufacturers, exports, and assembly. Right, so apart from that, we have these capital investment bits. So what we would normally do is leave that for later down. So while the capital investment came first, we work out the profit areas first. And basically to get the profit, once more, the choice is working between finding profit on the cash flow after deducting the depreciation and then tax on that, or finding the tax on depreciation one side and bringing that tax cash flow in. But I think we will work with the depreciation, convert the cash flows into profit, and then add back the depreciation. So that way we can identify the loss that is created and what can we do with the loss. So you're right, start off with sales. So selling price of 700 euros. Where did that come from? Further down, current selling price of each component. But hold on, that's a component that they're making. Right. Number of components to be sold every year. Good. So we have the selling price 700, and what do we have to do with that 700? We were told since that's euros, right? It needs to be increased by the average EU rate of inflation from year one onwards. So we can choose either to work that. Yeah, we should work that in a working. So let's go further down to working. To convert to YR, we have to multiply by the amount, and we have to selling price inflate as well. Variable costs. So converting, inflating, and multiplying by quantities, so to find sales. So let's start off with a working for sales. 150, 480, and 730 and 360. So I could come up here. Oh, this is a lot of scrolling back and forth. Should have done it on the next page. That's all right. Sales. So you have units. 150, 480, 730, and 260. We have selling price. We call that the 700, 700, 700, 700. We have the inflation. EU, European inflation, what was it? Current spot rates, that. EU inflation for the next 2 years, 5 and 5, year 3 onwards. So this here is another hint in terms of when I was querying in the beginning what to inflate. So if this is from year 3, 2 previous years must now be 1 and 2, and then get to 3. So I must inflate in year 1, right? So data has given you that hint there. So 5, 5, 4, 4 is what we'll do for the EU inflation. So let's run that down here with our numbers. 5544. So to inflate by 5%, my multiplication factor is 1.05, 1.05, 1.04, 1.04. Right, so I have inflation, and the last thing I need is exchange rate. Forex rate. So if this is the amount of euros that I have in my sales price, I would need to multiply by a rate of the Landwehr rands YR per euro. Do I have those rates? YR per euro for each, or do I have to calculate that? What do we got? Future rates based on, I have YR per dollar, and here we go. We have YR per euro, right? 165, 180.2, 190.2, 200.8. Function goes in. 165, 180.2, 190.2, and 200.8. So those were euros. These units were given in what? Back up to here. The number of units. So these were sale component units in thousands. So while those are thousands, we're trying to get to trillions. So units are in thousands. Let's see what we get. Start multiplying. Which piece you said you don't know for there? That's for the sales thingy. I just asked. Yeah? It's in thousands, right? So it when I would scroll up the page. Good. So start multiplying. Let's see if we can get a value here. And if these values start in thousands, we could convert it down to trillions. 750 by 150, that's going to be a lot. Then by 165. Wow, that's going to get us some big numbers. So, come on, multiply and give me some answers. Yes, 18 million thousand. So you understand why I chose to work in trillions, right? So YR in trillions. That's going to get me 18, if you want to say 18.1 or 18.2, that's all I want you to write in the exam, 18.2, and move on. Right? Next one. Equal that times that times that times that. Right, so this now 63.6 trillion. How do I get that? Equal all of this divide by 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, 63.5 trillion. And then I go and take it and put it here to one decimal place. 100.2 trillion. Now, hold on. I think we have something up here. We are making a little mistake somewhere. So our little mistake will be with the inflation line. So let's see how we can deal with that. So the idea is the inflation for year 1 should be good, but in year 2 now, it would also need to take account of the 1 year's inflation that went by. Follow? So that year 2's inflation has to be this number squared. How do I write that now? Power of 2. And that will change my value. So let's see if I can get any help with that. change my font. Follow the adjustment we need to make there, Anita. What we could do then is put a separate line. I don't think my new font is going to help me. Oops. One. Yep, that's what we need. Oh, no, my new font didn't help me at all. So delete that out, put the 2, and put that 2 as a superscript. Will the formula recognize that? Nope, formula is not recognizing that. So for me to show that as a working item, I need now to include some more spaces. So this will mess up my little format that I had going. Inflation lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, actually, know what I could do with a fancy formula? While you know what to do with that cubed, I will use my pen. So this will be this squared, and here it will be 1.4 also multiplied by 1.05 squared times that as well. And here it will be 1.05 squared times 1.04 squared. Right, so let me come on this side here and expand. So you understand how you got 1.05 squared, right? So that was year 1, which is 1.05, and squaring it means basically multiplying it by the year 2, 1.05. And that's how it becomes squared. So it accounts for both a year 1 inflation and a year 2 inflation. So you could write 1.05 squared. Now, if we move on to the, so this, all of this together is a year 2 factor, right? So if we move on to try and figure out what would the year 3 factor be, inflation factor that is, we'll need the year 1 of 1.05. We'll need the year 2 of 1.05, and we'll need the year 3 of 1.04. So our cash flow at that point, yes, all the other inflations before the current year. So our year 3 cash flow is suffering 3 years of inflation. So that's where, now you're not working with the cash flow value, it's just the inflation line value. So that's why I could rewrite that as 1.05 squared times the 1.04. And to get on to T4, we are now having 1.04 twice. So therefore that would be abbreviated in year 4. Year 4's inflation factor would be 1.05 squared for the first 2 years, and it's suffering 2 years at 4% inflation. Yeah? So the phrase add in is a little tricky there, right? We are accounting for the previous inflation, or in other words, we are multiplying by the previous inflation factors. Are we okay there? Yes? No? Are you good with those? Right. So let me deal with the formulae. So for this, I will also need to now include multiply by previous year. And that will get me the 66.8. And this now, I will need multiply by 1.05 and multiply by a second 1.05. And that will get me the 111. Very good. And the last one, I will need to include a multiply by previous year and a multiply by previous year and a multiply by the first year. And that will get us the 60.3. How you get there? right? Excellent. So, for some strange reason, the kit answer has 60.36. We have 60.34. I think we're good to go because they probably approximated the inflation factor. They did the inflation working separately rather than bunching it up here, how I did it. So, that is sales, finally. And again, in trillions. Wow. How long did it take to do that? Too much time, Anita. Excuse me, your hour and a half would disappear in doing all these workings. So this is where we say do the first one, maybe the second one, and plug in some numbers for the others. So that sort of exam technique I have abandoned. I'm not illustrating that at the moment. So what's the next thing we'll plug in? Or we could take these numbers and throw them up. So let me come up here and put in sales. And say this is equal to down there. And pull in the rest. Right, so I'm only working one decimal place. Saving time in the exam. You ain't gonna be writing all those numbers that you like so much in the exam. So reduce your writing. Save your time. All right, next line. After sales. Back to your question. What do you want to do next? Costs. Which one? Fixed costs, the easy stuff. Yes, very good. So get the easy one out of the way. So we have sale, variable costs, current fixed costs, YR, 4.6 trillion. And you just need to inflate that. All these costs expected to increase by that inflation. So fixed costs, and we are inflating the fixed cost line. So let's go. Do we need a separate working for that? Answer sheet didn't give any. Fixed costs. All right, so let's throw them in. So your first year fixed costs will be inflated by 1 year's inflation. Again, I forgot the amount. So the amount is 4.6 trillion. So 4.6. 4.6 inflated. So let's inflate 4.6. Again, our inflation rates in the landway are they're not here, they're not here. Oh no, panic, panic. Where are the inflation rates for the landway? At the top of the question. Hello, where's my mouse giving trouble? Right, so go to the top of the question and we would find, that's right, so 33 is the current level, and year one, however, is what we're dealing with. So we don't want T0, we want to have T1. So T1 is 22. So we're not working in 33, we're working 22. 22, 14.7, and 9.8. So let's go with that. 22, 14.7, 9.8. Once, fixed costs. Don't run away. Equal. 4.6 times 1.22. 5612. right? And we're dropping it down to 1 decimal place. That's right. And remember, it's going to be minus because it's a cost. So in my next year, this is where I could simply inflate the previous figure, right? But in the sales booking, you had different amounts. Here, since the cost of 4.6 is constant, I could simply take my previous year, 5.6, and inflate that by the inflation rate, which was again in the landway year 2, 14.7. So this times good 1.147, and again 1 decimal place. Yes, if that's working, I can do that as well. 6.4. And T3 onwards is 9.8. So this will be equal to that times 1.098. 6.4. 1 second, we'll get to your 6.4. So, as I was saying, since the original fixed cost of 4.6 is remaining constant, you have a net 4.6 every year. So after 1 year's inflation, I'm drawing this in a bad place. I'll erase it after. After 1 year's inflation at the 22%, I'm now taking that same amount and inflating that, not 2 years at 14.7, but the first year is 22, so you have to deal with the 22 and the 14 if you deal with the 4.6, or you could just take the 5.6 and ups that by 14.7. Right? So in other words, 5.6 times 1.147, which is 114.7%. Right? So instead of using the rates twice, I just use the last cash flow because it is a fixed cost. Right? Make sure. We could not have done that in the sales working because every year we had a different sales. But since the fixed cost is the same, we can do that shortcut. Just take the last or the previous working inflated by the current year's inflation. Same thing with the 7.1. We just need to take the previous year, 6.4, inflated by T3 inflation, which was the 9.8%. Good? 6.4 times the 1.098 to boot it up. All right, do the last one for me. Same process. Take in the previous and boot it up. What's the T for inflation? 13.9 you got? 13.9 seems a little funny. Funny. Try that again. 7.8, that's better. So that's what we want. So that's equal to that. Actually, what I could do is just copy my formula across. Because it will have the same value, 7.8. There we go. Right, so fixed cost, the easiest of all the workings, but yet was tricky. Ready to do the next one? Tell me what costs you will identify next. Variable costs. Right, what are we doing with this? So variable costs are varying, so we'll need to work out something. So, what did they tell us? Working capital, that's one thing. Lost it. Right. Variable cost related to components. So much per unit. So this now needs to be worked out with a unit working. So our working here has to now be similar to the sales working. So let's go down there, do a working like that. 59.60 per unit. So we could now say working to variable costs. Again, all amounts in trillions. Have the units. We have the cost of one and 720 is our units, 360 is our units. We need to multiply these things by the variable costs and then inflate it. So working at trillions, we have the units, we have the cost, YR, trillions, which would have been the 15.9 works out to 16.0, 16, 16, 16, and now we have inflation in YRs. So we have YR inflation, which is 22%. Was it 22 point anything? No, just 22. 22 there. 14.7, 9.8, 9.8. 9.8, 9.8. Right, so again, we'll have to do that combination type scenario, whereas it's oh, I should have written out the factors and not the percentages. So this would be an inflation factor of 1.22. This would now be 1.147. This is 1.098. 1.098. Right, now of course, same thing that applied last time. Hey, why are you saying quirks to me? Same thing that applied last time in the second row, it will be 1.22 times that. And here would be 1.22 times 1.147 times that. And here it will be this squared and the same 1.22 times 1.147, right? 1, 2, 3, and that to the 1 squared. Is the inflation working good? Yes, no? The inflation working? Yeah, great. So punch it in and let us get values. So variable cost trillions. YR would be equal to that times that times that. Wait a minute. I think I went a little buggy here. The cost in YR, that variable cost can't be in trillions. What was that? That 15,960. That's 15,960 YRs. So I have to put that here. 15,960. Those need to come back in. The trillions come in only in the last line. So little bit of a typo there. Watch out for that. So this is not in trillions. This is YRs. YR, just singular YR. But here now we have to get the trillions of YRs. So as we multiply all those, here is where we divide it by 1. So that was thousands. We'll have to divide it by 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's a small amount of trillions. Yeah, it's only 2 million. So if it's 2 million, then it's 0.02 trillion. And we're in a little spot of bother here. Quite botheration. So variable costs, something's up. Something is up because the answer sheet isn't saying that that is 2 million. The answer sheet is saying that's 2 trillion. So what did we miss? Variable costs, 15,960. Was the variable cost given in thousands? Let's check that back. Variable costs, that 15,960. I lost it. Nope, just 15,960 million. So the fixed cost was given in millions. So many per unit. The sales units were in thousands. So that's where we're missing a thousands. No, we can't leave it in millions because we have it wrong. It's wrong. It's so wrong because up here is 150,000. That's what's wrong. Follow? Our units, quantities were in thousands. So, of course, you could choose to write the word thousands next to it, like we did for sales. And doesn't really matter once you bring in the extra zeros into our last line here. So if, I think I'll do that. We'll work it just like how we did here. So here it's in thousands, right? Follow? Yay or nay? And because that's in thousands up there, we don't need to divide by 9 zeros, only need to divide by 6 zeros. The value itself was incorrect by a missing amount of 3 zeros. Are you with me, my one student? Great. So 2.92, and again we're lumping it down to 1 decimal place, saving ourselves time and space in the exam. And that is that. So now we can go ahead and say equal. Actually, I could copy my formula here, Control-C, drop that there, and include the extra inflation for the previous year, times also that 10.7. Yep, very good. Same thing again for the next column. So while I have that first inflation, I have to include multiplication for the next line there. Are you getting the 17.9? Excellent. And look at how much time we're spending here, Miss Anita. Will this ever be possible to do in an exam? I would say no. That is why you simply must bite the bullet and deal with your theory. You must deal with your theory. Okay? So, I think I will knock out at 11:30, so I will spend 10 minutes with you here again, working these things, and we could probably continue on Monday night or so. Sales, fixed costs, variable costs. All right, 9.6, very good. So equal minus that. Good. So that's that. What is your next item that you want to work? After variable costs. What's next? Come on. You don't know. You gotta look at the case, Anita. Come on. Come on. You're the one who loves all these calculations. So we got past the fixed cost, we got the selling price, we got the variable cost. All that came from this one paragraph here. What's the next cost in this paragraph? What's the first line in that paragraph that you omitted? Component, right? Let's deal with the component now. Give it a little shot. I just need to grab a charger and plug in the phone. I'll be back in less than a minute. Okay, we're back. So how does components go? We got the cost of 200. And remember we said in our essay we're going to deal not with the 200, but we want to now deal with the increased costs of 280. So here is where we will need what you mentioned before, which is a forex rate to change now from dollars into Elan Rand YRs. So good. So 280, let's set up the working, and then we'll get back to the data. So we're looking for component cost. Again, working trade this time. Should have labeled the other one. Working 2. Working 1. Right, so starting up with this here again, amounts in trillions. And we are also using the units, and the units are again in thousands. So let's not make that mistake again. So we have our units in thousands. Component cost at T0 is the 280, which we chose. It's a bigger value, 280, 280, 280, and this again, component cost dollars. So from dollars, we need to inflate inflation rate from the US. What were our US inflation rates? Inflation rates for the US. Euro. Oh no, euro per dollar. Oh, those are exchange rates. Inflation rates. There we go. US inflation rates all at 3%. So that makes life a little bit easier. So all our inflation factors. Inflation. US rates 3%, 1.03, 1.03, 1.03, 1.03. So if it's 3% per year, then my writing here now becomes easier. Now I could write 1.03 squared, 1.03 cubed, and 1.03 to the power 4. Right? Because it's the same inflation value each year. So again, this is where we could have a shortened working. This is where we could simply take 1.03 and multiply by the previous. Hold on, don't jump the numbers yet, because we have, like the sales, to also include the exchange rate, Forex rate. And the rate to multiply a dollar value by would be YR rate per dollar. Do we have that? Or did you account for that exchange rate already? Yeah, very good. So 43,260, 43,260. Nope, you have to account for that properly. So 43,260, where are our rates? Our rates are YR per dollar, 120.1, 133.7, 142.5, 151.9. So bringing those down here. 120.1, 123.7, 142.5, and 151.9. Right. So, yeah. Okay, there we go. 5.1 trillion And that's in trillions because there are extra 3 zeros to add on here from the units line, right? So 5.2 trillion. Excuse me, that's what we will go with. So we are now going to say, hold on, what went on there? We are now going to say this is not sales. What are we working on? Component cost. And cost. 19 for a second value. Let me see. Yeah, 19 is right. 19 trillion. YR's trillions. Equals that times that times that times that all over 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5.19. Drop that to 2 decimals. Oh, there you run away. 31.8, beautiful, yes. Keep going. And I will need to, could I square this down here? Put this pink one, power of 2. 19.1, yes. Let's put this pink one, power of 3. 51.8, yes. And put this pink one to the power of 4. And the 17.2 that I need to got. Very nice. And there we go. So throw these up, and then we can throw this question out for tonight. And continue at our next meeting. Component cost equal minus. Right? Now, the alternative would be to try and do what the answer sheet did in terms of they inflated the selling price, parts, and variable costs first as a separate working, and then that avoided the extra inflation working in here. But I'm sort of choosing to do the inflation all at once. So it's up to you. It's up to you how you format that as such. All right. So this, Anita, is the disadvantage of banking on computations to get 50 marks in the exam. It takes too long. Okay. So, old people need to sleep, so gotta go. Right. So I hope this recording is useful for our next 2 parties who didn't get here tonight, and continue working, and we will discuss the rest of the numbers on Monday night. All right. So I would see hopefully everybody on Monday night. Thank you very much, Anita, for struggling through here, and hopefully, yes, hopefully Natalie would be able to join us again on Monday night. Right. Goodbye, everyone. And I will load these up onto the, what do I use there? I use YouTube, and I will post your links on the WhatsApp. Okay. Good night. Take care. Bye-bye.